Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Ask Anthem podcast. Today, I am very excited to announce our guest, my former running back coach at Oregon State and now head football coach at Idaho, Coach Thomas Ford. Coach, thanks so much for joining us today.
Man, I appreciate you, Gavin. It's great to be on here, man. I'm super proud of you and excited for what you guys are doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So to start off, just to kind of get into things, I just want to know, how has this season been so far? What's the outlook on it? And just kind of give us a little overview about that.
Yeah, well, 2 weeks into it, we're 1-1. Very close loss to an FBS opponent in Washington State.
Yeah.
And then coming off a win last week against a very good St. Thomas team. So very excited about where we're at. I think very encouraged and optimistic about where we're at. And but as you know, in Division I football, man, you got to go prove it every week. And
exactly. And no wins are ever given, so
no, there are no guaranteed wins in Division I football.
Exactly. And especially a first-year head coach, I bet that was, it's probably a big adjustment, coming in and having to take over a program. So I think you're doing a wonderful job so far.
I appreciate that. We've got some really good players here that are hardworking dudes, and I think I got a great staff, man, that cares about kids. So it's off to a good start, and I think the best is still yet to come.
Heck yeah. So, Coach, another question, just kind of start off. Can you give us a little background on, your football journey and what's led you to this point?
Yeah, man, it's definitely hasn't been a linear path. It's had some curves and twists along the way. But, I started off coaching at Linfield, my alma mater, right there in Oregon. And, we had a lot of success I had a lot of success there as a player. We're, 41-4, won a national championship my senior year. And played a little arena football. But as my kind of career was coming to an end football-wise, I really wanted to get into coaching, and I had an opportunity to go be the running backs coach at Linfield. So I did that for 2 seasons. And then I kind of knew this is what I really want to do. But I also wanted to get a master's. So I got a graduate assistant job at Southeastern Oklahoma State, which is in Division II, right there on the Oklahoma-Texas border.
Okay.
Did that for a year, and then got hired on full-time as a full-time coach there, coaching wide receivers, was the recruiting coordinator, special teams coordinator. And I did that for another 2 seasons. And then I wanted to really get back to the West Coast. I'm from Seattle originally.
Yep.
Want to be back out west, and got a job coaching on defense at the University of Puget Sound, which is another Division III school.
Yep.
Up there in Tacoma. Did that for 2 years. Became the defensive coordinator in year 2, and then I really wanted to try my hand at being a head coach. I just had my daughter, and Division III coaching is hard unless you have like a spot that has good financial aid, and where I was at that time wasn't great, right? So it was, kids paying like $60,000 to go to school, and I just wanted to do something different. So I took over a program that hadn't had a lot of success in Stadium High School there in Tacoma as well, and we weren't successful early. We were 0-10 my first year, had a bunch of sophomores playing, but I just thought if the process is correct, you can get this thing going,
Oh, for sure.
By year 3, we had our first winning season since 1993, had made it to the postseason for the first time in the school's history. So we did some good things there. Actually was named co-coach of the year in that league in 2016 and had a lot of success, And so we got that program turned around, and then I got an opportunity to go back to college football as the head coach at Simon Fraser University up there in Canada.
Yep.
And again, another program, not a lot of great success coming into it.
Yeah.
Hadn't won a game before I showed up in almost 4 years. And we didn't win a lot, but we won. We got a chance to win. And I was actually named coach of the year in the GNAC in 2018, and it wasn't because we were beating anybody, right? We just turned a program that kind of was, not relevant.
Yeah.
Hadn't really won, was getting 90 points scored on them the year before.
Jeez.
And we made games really competitive, and we turned it into a program that was at least respectable. You had a game plan for us every week. And so had a little bit of success there. And then I got an opportunity to go back to Seattle as an offensive analyst, working with the tight ends at the University of Washington. It was kind of my first opportunity to coach Division I football. And I felt like that experience really helped me learn a lot as far as the organization. And in small college ball, you do learn a lot because you're doing a lot.
Yeah.
You're hands-on, you're doing the video.
No, for
You know, you're
sure.
doing the recruiting stuff. But at the Division I level, you have so much more help. And so I got to see how detailed you can be with that help. And I think that really helped me there. And I, again, had 2 years as an analyst there, and then got a chance to come here to Idaho as an assistant coach. I was the special teams coordinator and running backs coach here at Idaho. And again, we had success here. You know, we got to the playoffs 2 years in a row.
You guys were great when you were there.
Yeah, we had some good years, right? And 2023, my last year here, you know, we made it to the quarterfinals and really had a good squad. So then after that, then I got a chance to cross paths with you, man, at Oregon State.
Yep.
You know, as the running backs coach there under Trent Bray in 2024, and then Coach Jason Eck, the guy who hired me here at Idaho, took the job at New Mexico.
Yep.
And I got that call, and I did a great job in my interview, and was able to take over the program here, and have been here since really hired in December, but been on, you know, boots on the ground since January.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I think it's interesting because obviously today, a lot of what we're going to be talking about is just kind of the, you know, the current state of NIL and all that. And I think what's interesting to me is just the differences in like how you have to recruit at all those different schools. Like schools where obviously maybe at a Simon Fraser, it's not the easiest to get the kids to come there. And then going to Oregon State and Idaho, where obviously kids are more prone to want to go to those schools.
Sure.
But I think especially now, like I've seen just how recruiting has changed so much, and just not even just like the strategy, but just like, you know, it's not just about making kids like you anymore in recruiting. There's a lot more that goes into it. So
no doubt.
And we'll touch on that a little bit today. So another question I kind of wanted to know about is just who are some you know, your biggest mentors that along your football journey that you feel like have kind of impacted your coaching style, or, you know, just stuff like that?
Well, my college head coach, Jay Losey, he was a huge impact on me. You know, Coach Losey was just one of those guys that understood relationships and understood how to treat everybody fairly without treating everybody the same. And I think I learned a lot from Coach Losey. Still in contact with him to this day. He actually kind of helped me get the job over at Oregon State because he was at Oregon State after he left Linfield. But Coach Losey's he was really a big factor in my development. Another guy was Ray Richards. I worked with Coach Richards at Southeastern Oklahoma, and I think what Ray really brought to the table for me is just this understanding that you can be good at coaching without being miserable. You don't have to, you know, work 14, 15, 16-hour days or, you know, 12-hour days in the off season to be successful. And he told me this once. He said, "Coach, you're never going to have to, you know, have that office mandatory in July, because I ain't gonna be able to give you a lot of raise, but I could give you a nice summer." And that kind of, you know, that meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
As a young guy, especially with my wife and I just kind of starting our journey together. But those two guys definitely early in my career. You know, more recently, probably some guys that really, you know, had a huge effect on me. Jimmy Lake, you know, Coach Lake and I still talk to this day. Jimmy Lake is with the Rams now, but I thought, you know, he obviously his tenure at Washington didn't end well, but I thought, being there, right, it was not a dysfunctional situation, right? It was very organized. You know, everybody knew what they were doing, and I really respected the way Jimmy had everything structured and how detailed it was. The scenarios we practiced at practice. We practiced today here, you know, at Idaho. So the special cats, he called them back then. And then probably the most recent guy that I worked with that had a big influence on me was Jason Eck. You know, Coach Eck. You know, working with him here, he was awesome because he just believed in developing the whole program, coaches included. You know, when I had my kind of review with him after the first year, you know, and he asked me, you know, what do you have a choice? What do you do? You want to be the best running backs coach in the NFL, or you want to be a head coach again? Because you can do either one. And I said, you know, Coach, I really do want to be a head coach again someday. You know, and he said, okay. And he, in that 2023 season, really, you know, I felt like helped develop me in that way. He was including me on more meetings. He was, you know, asking me, you know, a bunch of questions and valuing my opinion in those things, and just including me in a lot more. And I think, you know, those four guys have really been, you know, hugely influential throughout my coaching career for sure. Yeah.
I think the first coach you talked about who kind of helped you learn about building relationships with players, that's one thing that really stood out about you to me when I met you. I feel like a lot of coaches in college football, no shade, but a lot of the time they maybe don't look at you. They don't want to build a great relationship with you. They're more worried about maybe what you can bring them on the field. And like as a player, sometimes like you want a coach that you feel like you can go talk to, and you feel like you can trust and stuff like that. And I think that's one thing that me and all the other running backs as well really appreciated about you.
Well, that means a lot, man. That means a lot, Gavin. And I think that's part of what has allowed me to be successful is I've been genuine, man.
Yeah.
I do care about the guys I coach.
No, for sure.
And as you become the head coach, right, you're responsible for a lot more guys,
No,
right? And I
definitely.
but when those guys know, right, that they can come into my office and talk to me like
Yeah.
a regular human being, there's no separation on
Yeah.
some pedestal as me being the head coach, I think is really crucial.
No, for sure. So on the topic of Idaho, I was kind of curious. So what has been like the most rewarding part of just being able to go back and become the head coach at Idaho after coaching there a couple years?
Yeah, I think just seeing how the relationships I built here as an assistant mattered, right? Like they're real relationships. People that treated me so well when I was the running backs coach and special teams coordinator here are the same people that treat me well now. It isn't like people switched up just because I became the head coach, and I think the people here is probably what I'm really glad I came back to, right? We just got great people in our building. It's different here at Idaho. You get a lot of interaction with, the other athletes and their coaches. And so you feel like, for example, I go to a women's basketball game, I feel invested in the game because I've been seeing these girls working out in the gym, right? And I talk to their coaches all the time about, their recruitment and these things. So that's been really rewarding, just kind of coming back to the Vandal family and the community here.
Yeah. I saw recently the new helmets you guys are doing, the Fighting Taters. That stuff was pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, man, that was dope.
So now switching the topic a little bit, I want to obviously dive into the whole name, image, and likeness stuff. So how has name, image, and likeness, also known as NIL, obviously, kind of changed your day-to-day responsibilities as a coach from 5 years ago when it wasn't really a thing yet? Kind of, or maybe not just that, or just like the recruiting too. Like how has it affected those kind of situations?
Well, it's funny you say that because, 3 years ago when I came here as an assistant, it's even drastically different from then, right? When I came here as an assistant, NIL was almost non-existent at the FCS level.
Yeah.
Right? Like there weren't really guys that had NIL deals in 2022. And you fast forward to now and we got, several guys, a lot of guys playing football for us that are also getting incentivized with some NIL deals. It's part of the reason we were able to attract them to our university. So again, it's changed in the respect that it is a thing. And I think it's a factor more specifically for us in terms of retainment of our student athletes and transfer student athletes, right? It really hasn't changed that much for us in terms of our high school recruiting. NIL is not going to, if it's a super big deal to a family, it's probably not going to be the greatest fit because we have plenty of NIL programs for freshmen. But, those opportunities are, the bigger opportunities, I should say, are going to be really more warranted for guys that are playing.
No, for sure.
These businesses in town, some of our corporate sponsors, things like that, help with NIL deals with our student athletes. Like they want the guys that play.
Yeah.
They want the guys that are scoring touchdowns or making tackles on Saturday. So it has changed definitely in the respect of trying to keep our really good players here. And when our really good players do leave and we need transfer help, we can have a little bit of money to help incentivize those transfers to come to Idaho.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I heard from a coach a couple weeks ago. He was kind of telling me it's now recruiting. It used to be you're recruiting high school kids and that's pretty much it. But now it's like you're recruiting the high school kids, recruiting transfers, but also having to recruit to even keep your players to like not leave your school.
Yeah, man, no doubt. You're always recruiting as a college coach.
So yeah, I just think that sounds very stressful. So that kind of leads into my next question as well. So how do you think because obviously NIL has kind of taken over at the FBS level, but do you think NIL has affected like recruiting and roster management like a lot at the FCS level as well?
I think so. I think it definitely has made its place kind of known as it's here to stay, right? I think uh, maybe not to the extent of the Power Four, but similar to some of the Group of Five schools that are, again, trying to retain their guys, trying to attract transfers. I think it's really changed that part of the game where high school recruiting is still really big, especially at our level, because you got to develop. At the end of the day, you got to develop.
For sure.
But
for the culture as well.
Yeah, the culture for sure, and then just long-term development, right? There's going to be a ton of guys in our program that are going to be great players, but it might not be till their third, fourth, or fifth year, right? And that's still got to be okay, but you're always going to need immediate help. And so again, making sure that your immediate help isn't walking out the door, or that you're able to attract transfers to help is huge. And so it's definitely had I think probably it'll have a lasting effect on our level of football too.
So you kind of talked about how obviously donors, whether it's people donating to the collective or it's your revenue sharing, however you're paying your athletes, but because the way I look at it is it's like it's an investment. Like you're investing in this player, paying them money to come. Have you faced experiences yet where maybe that investment didn't work out in your favor, where you thought someone might help impact the program and didn't have the same impact you kind of expected?
Thankfully not yet, right? Most of the guys that we've really incentivized to stay have been playing at a pretty high level. But again, I think that's part of our process, right? Like we do as much digging as you can possibly do on these guys to make sure that, what we're getting. You never know 100% what you're going to get until a guy gets here, right?
No, for sure.
But we're doing our best to kind of, quality control the best we can, so we're not full of surprises when a guy shows up, right? And especially a guy that we're going to incentivize and try to find ways to get them, additional NIL opportunities.
Yeah. So one thing we talked about last week with the Oregon State general manager now that used to run the collective is obviously there's a lot of people will debate there's some downsides of NIL in college football, but I also think people don't address enough the positive sides. And in the NFL a lot, or in the NBA, you see a lot of players use their money for good, and whether it's donating to a charity, donating to a foundation, stuff like that. Have you seen players that you've been around that have started using their NIL money for good purposes like that?
Yeah, I think so. I think some of our guys here do a good job taking care of their teammates too, right? Just for example, just having like group meals, and the guy that's getting a little bit of extra cash can help out with that, right? And they're excited to do that for their teammates. So I've certainly seen a lot of benefits to NIL too. And I guess my overall kind of perspective on NIL in general is like, why would these guys not have an opportunity to make money off their name, image, and likeness? They're the ones putting in the work. They're the ones, executing on a high level on Saturdays. And if people want to, promote them and they use them to promote their business, why would we why would we stand in their way? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I think the system was broken so long that now that it's trying to counterbalance itself. Obviously, you're going to get the reaction of, oh, it's ruining college football and it's professionalizing the sport and all these things. I think that's a negative perspective that I just don't share.
Yeah, well, it's also like, because 10 years ago, if a college player, a very talented player, and they go through college balling out, but they don't make any money, obviously, and then say their senior year they get hurt, like that impacts the rest of their life. Where now it's like a player can make a good living and save up some money from college that will set them up for success later in life, which I think is super big. Because obviously the sport, the sport that we play and in football, it's like a very it's a higher risk sport. Like an injury can ruin your whole career in a split second. You don't even know. So I as a player thought it was awesome, because like I just think was kind of weird how players are the reason that college football generates so much money, and they weren't getting a share of that.
Right.
Like the whole. I always look at the whole Reggie Bush thing. Like they really took away his Heisman because of it, and now look at it. It's like
Unbelievable. Yeah.
um,
Seems pretty silly now.
it does. So next question I have. So obviously being a head coach at Idaho now, you kind of are responsible for a lot of your athletes. How do you help prepare your athletes for long-term success, both on and off the field, throughout their NIL opportunities?
I think more specifically just how we do it in our program, right? Like
Mhm.
the things that we're trying to build with our culture don't just pertain to football. We talk a
Mhm.
lot here about how you do one thing is how you do everything,
Mhm.
right? You can't expect to be a great player without being a great teammate, or if you're a very average student, or you're just not a very good, human being, right? You're not acting in a way that's civil and correct, right, so to speak, out in public. So I think a lot of what we're talking about with discipline, and just again how you approach things through hard work, right, treating people the right way, those are the type of things I think are more important, really, as far as like our development of our young men. And that's something I'm really proud of. I think our guys have really bought into this team unit me mentality, right? You kind of know about that deal,
Oh
right?
yeah, for sure.
And it's pretty cool to see, because again I think it allows not only our coaches to hold players accountable, but for players to hold each other accountable. Because at the end of the day, player-led teams are typically the best teams, and that's what we're really trying to continue to push our guys towards. And again, help build them for future success. Because again, at the end of the day, if you make great decisions and you take ownership of when you do make mistakes, I think you're a lot more likely to grow in any profession that you get into.
Yeah. No, for sure. Um, so I want to know, so in the next, 5 years, what is kind of your prediction for, what the NIL atmosphere will look like? Or what changes do you think might be made? It's okay if you don't have an answer.
Gosh,
It's just
yeah,
kind
no, I
of,
think,
because, like
ah,
every year there's so much, change and new rules that come out.
oh yeah,
Like
it
now, I
seems
don't
like
know,
every
like the
month
whole
there's new
revenue
ones.
sharing thing now,
Sure.
which will change a lot. Because in the past, I don't think people realize that there's just a distinction between NIL deals and then like the collective, because there wasn't a lot of players actually getting NIL deals with like brands. It was more like donors donating into a collective and the collective paying. But I just want to know if you have any predictions of, what other changes might come in the future.
I'm not positive in terms of what it looks like, because it's changed so much already. What I can tell you, what I hope it turns into, right, is that players are getting opportunities definitely to have revenue sharing.
Hmm.
I think that's a huge step in the right direction. And what I'm really hoping is that there's a situation where kids can truly get paid from their name, image, and likeness, not just pay for play, right? Not just,
Yeah.
hey, cut a check because you showed up, but getting out there and doing things in the community, getting out there and promoting great causes or businesses that are doing things in the community. That's my hope for it, right? Because again, that's how I see this thing being successful long term, where again it might not be every single kid getting a bunch of money, but everyone's getting something because of that revenue share.
Hmm.
And then the guys that are really playing well, the guys that are performing at all conference, all American levels, well then those guys really, let's just call it what it is, those guys are the ones that deserve the true NIL that we're thinking of, right, where they're getting paid from their name, image, or their likeness. And hopefully we can get to that point where it is, again, it's fair for everyone, but those guys that really truly deserve the NIL, true NIL stuff, that those are the ones really not only getting those opportunities, but engaging in those opportunities for what I believe the spirit of this whole change in college football and college athletics is all about.
Yeah. And one thing that I've thought about before is just like when NIL first got introduced, I feel like there was a big gap between, obviously they were giving out these young 18, 19-year-old players a lot of money, but they weren't giving them the education on stuff on how to manage that and how to use that. And obviously here at Anthem, we focus on kind of helping players manage that, whether it's their tax implications, stuff like that, just managing their money in general to set them up for later in life. And I'm kind of interested if you think in the next couple of years you'll see schools start to, use it as a way to start teaching like these kids when they're young how to financially be stable? Do you think programs will start implementing that more?
I think that that's their, in a lot of ways, their moral obligation,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I think anytime we're, putting, thousands of dollars in kids' hands, you should have some type of ways to help them make smart decisions with said money, right? And I definitely think that educational piece, that management piece will certainly become more prevalent, I think, at every university. And again, I think it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah. And I think that schools could potentially even start using that as kind of like a recruiting pitch, like, hey,
Yeah, for sure.
you can come to our school. We're gonna, give you the money, but also we're gonna make sure that you're set up for success and not just, and like learn how to you
Yeah,
learn how to manage your money at a young age. So if you do go to the NFL where you're getting even bigger contracts,
sure.
you're not just out there and left by yourself. So wrapping it up here, I have one more question that I just kind of want to hear your thoughts on. So what advice would you give to young coaches that are coming up right now on how to manage and deal with all this crazy stuff going on in the NIL atmosphere?
Honestly, I know it sounds cliche, man, but control what you can control,
Uh-huh.
right? Be a hard worker on whatever task they're asking you to do. I think one thing that I've seen with young coaches, probably over the last maybe 10 years, I've been doing this for almost 2 decades. Like, this is my 19th year this season. And what I've seen from younger coaches, and maybe it was still present when I was a younger coach, but it seems that younger coaches these now are just, they're impatient with the process, right? They become a GA and want a position job at an SEC school the next year. They become a position coach at the FCS level and think they should be a coordinator, in year 3. That process isn't linear, man. Like,
Yeah.
coaching
Yeah,
ain't
you
linear.
said that at the beginning of the show that
Yeah.
your journey
If
hasn't
my
been
experience,
linear.
yeah, exactly. Like, if my journey can be any indication of it, it is a windy road, and that's okay, right? I think young guys need to be willing to go take out the trash, so to speak, go grab a coach's coffee, so to speak, right? Do
Get your
the
hands dirty a
small
little
things
bit.
that, yeah, right. The small things that don't seem important, but for example, like with my younger coaches, they're in a group chat with me, man. They're the backbone of the program. Right?
Yeah.
That's literally what that group chat's called, because they do so many of the little things that keep this program running smoothly. And I think they've got to realize how important those things are. And when veteran coaches see you doing those things, right, we are way more likely to go pick up the phone and help you when the time comes than if you're a guy that feels entitled or, feels like you need to be handed something, or that because you've done this, you deserve that. It's not really how it works, right? Everybody's going to get their opportunity when they come, but you got to be ready for it. The only way to be ready truly in coaching is to do everything and anything that needs to be done. Not necessarily that's asked to be done either.
No, for sure. I think that's interesting that you say that, because I've kind of looked at that the same way with, players coming up, because nowadays with the transfer portal, how excessive it's gotten is freshmen come in and they're like, oh, I don't play my first year. I want to go to a new school. And I feel like part of the journey and part of the process is, going through your freshman year and learning from the people above you and, taking it all in, because it's hard to just go from school to school and never really, have to do the grind that programs, I feel like that used to be a big thing. Kids back in the day, you come in as a freshman, you don't really play, and then you wait, but you learn behind the dudes who have been there, and then year 3, you're ready to go. But I agree with that. People have got too impatient, and the process is probably the most important part of the journey. So
It is. If you have the process correct, when you get into that position that you really were trying to get to, or that goal you're trying to, end goal you're trying to make it to, you'll be ready.
No, for
You'll be
sure.
prepared. You'll have done everything you're supposed to do to take on that challenge, man. So
Yeah.
I definitely feel you on that with the young players as well. Those guys, their time is coming, and sometimes when you have a chance to learn in one system, you can master it as opposed to trying to jump to the next.
No, for sure. Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us today. You gave us some very good insight on just how this whole thing has been playing out. It was a great hearing your perspective on it all. Any last words before, we wrap this thing up?
No, I appreciate you for having me. I think, educating the folks out in the space that is kind of confusing and weird.
It is for a lot of
huge,
people.
right?
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
And there's so much misinformation out there that I think what you guys are doing is awesome, right? Getting some true perspective on what is actually happening, right? Like, we as coaches, like we're in it, like we know exactly what's going on. Athletics directors, they're in it. They know what's going on. So having people that are in real life situations and getting meaningful information is huge, man. So we appreciate you too, Gavin.
Of course. Well, thank you everyone for watching this episode today. If you want to see more content just like this, follow our social medias linked below, whether that's our Twitter or X, I guess we should call it now, YouTube, Instagram, all that good stuff. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.